So welcome to the Ministry to Women Leader Zoom, hopefully the first of many. And tonight I want to talk about building your team. Now, we are all in various stages of ministry leadership. Um, so this is going to hit you in a different place than it might hit somebody else. And so I am open to discussion and dialogue. This is certainly not a lecture format. So if you want to unmute yourself, if you want to jump in, if you have a question, if you have something relevant to what we're talking about, I definitely feel like your voice is just as important in this conversation. This is not the Nikki show. Okay. We are women's ministry leaders today. So we're going to lead each other. But just so that you are aware, if you want more information about ministry to women or how to get involved with Women of SoCal, you can go to socalnetwork.org/women. That's going to be your primary resource. It's going to have contact information for each of our directors, for each of our, different areas of whatever it is that you're leading in. And so you can go there and get more information. That's a little sneak peek because I'm going to tell you about one of the web pages at the end. But tonight we're going to be talking about building your team. And so I just wanted to, we kind of introduced ourselves before I started recording, but I thought this would be really fun. If you could describe yourself using 3 emojis, what would it be? If you could describe yourself, your current mood, a hobby, or personality trait, if you could describe yourself in 3 emojis, you can drop them in the chat if you have that ability. I know it might be hard if you're on a phone, but you can drop that in the chat, or you can just describe them. So I happen to put here the smiley face with the stars on it because I'm often just in awe. I'm like, I just get excited about things, and I feel like that just accurately describes me. And then the party emoji is one of my favorite ones to use whenever I'm texting. Even if I mean, you could be using that legitimately, like I'm excited, or most often I use it very sarcastically. Like when my kids ask me what's for dinner, I send them the party emoji. Like, yay, I'm so excited. Let's woo. And then the sticking out your tongue emoji, because I'm very often silly and I often will punctuate text messages with that so that they know I'm not actually being serious. I'm not trying to be mean. So I use those 3 a lot. So if you guys could describe yourself in 3 emojis, what might they be? I love that, Sandy.
Mhm.
I love that. Do you want to describe them to us? Like, why would you choose those 3 emojis?
Now I gotta go back and see what I put. Okay, so party because I'm really excited about my granddaughter that's gonna be born in a couple of weeks. Sad because as missionaries, I think we all go through this where we feel like we're finally getting momentum going and we're finally beginning to see fruit of those years of building bridges of trust, and we have to just stop all of that and go back to give a report to the people that so sacrificially and lovingly support us. So there's that. I'm happy, but I'm also sad that I have to leave, and I'm feeling kind of crazy at the same time, trying to tie up all the loose ends and figure out how to say goodbyes and say hellos back in a culture that I have not been living in for 3 years. So all of those things. And those are good things. I mean, listen, we're very grateful that we have a sending family that we get to return and see.
That's good. That's good. But those are, I mean, that just is a reflection that we are complex human beings and we are allowed to feel multiple emotions all at the same time, right? That's awesome. Carol or Maria, if you could describe yourself in 3 emojis, what might they be?
Okay.
Oh, I
I
love Carol.
I'm always joking around, so I did that joking emoji. And then I love to laugh. It's my favorite thing to do. Yeah. I'm kind of known for laughing. And And then I love deeply. I love my women. I love my family. And that's just a big part of me. So those are the three I picked.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say to Sandy, I'm going to be having my fourth grandbaby in July, and I cannot wait.
Aw, that's so exciting. Congrats, Carol. That's awesome. All right, Maria, what about you?
You know what? I don't have the ability to put the emojis just because I'm on my phone, and I'm afraid that if I try, I'm going to get disconnected. So
Yeah.
I'll describe a little bit. I typically, when I send out a text, I will usually end it with a happy face and a lot of little kisses around. That's just me. I love to hug people. I love to smile at people. I think that's something that people need to see more often. So that's usually my go-to emoji. Um, and sometimes when someone will text me about anything that I think is pretty serious, then it may not be an emoji, but I may put down praying hands. And so that they know that I'm praying, even though I can't talk to them at that moment. So I will tend to do that, but my go-to emojis are usually like a big white smile and just a face with a lot of kisses around or a lot of little little hearts around. Those are my go-to really. When somebody sends me something that I think they have a need to talk, I'll usually put one with like with a smile on my face, letting them know I cannot talk right now, but I'm gonna get back to them. Um, but yeah, those are kind of the ones that I go to.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Okay, so the next one I want to ask is what inspired you to join women's ministry? And I don't necessarily, it could be about like what inspired you to join leadership. I'm going to assume though that it's because you felt a strong call and God opened a door. But I want to know, think back to the first time you walked into a women's ministry Bible study or a tea or a lunch or whatever, and you said, I want to be a part of this. What inspired you to join women's ministry?
Who do you want to start?
If you have something, Carol, go ahead and jump in.
Okay, so gosh, about, I don't know, 40 years ago, my husband and I started a church with another couple, and the church was going great. And all these people kept asking me to start a Bible study, but I felt so really, I think we were too young to start a church. We were only even Christians a few years, but people kept asking me to start a Bible study. And I kept going, oh no, I don't know enough. I just don't know enough. And finally, the pastor, between the four of us, this other couple became, he said, everyone's saying that they want you to start a Bible study. And I go, but I don't know all the answers. And he goes, then just say, I don't know. And it was like, how come I never thought of that, you know? And so I started a Bible study. It started out being a women's Bible study, but then the husbands wanted to start, it just grew like crazy. And so somehow from the very beginning, I've always had a ministry to predominantly women. And then my husband and I moved up to Oceanside to help plant another church. And I was very involved with women there. And then about 10 years ago, I started a women's ministry. And I did that for 5 years. And I just rented a facility on the beach, and it was beautiful, and women came, and it was called Heart to Heart. And it was just really connecting with women heart to heart. And I would bring other women in to also share. And to this day, the ladies are still asking me to start it up again, but I'm currently very busy with the Bible study that I'm doing, and it's over 20 people. So it's like a small church as it is. So I've just always been geared towards ministering to women. And it's so rewarding to see God touch their lives. We've been through so much. Some of them have lost children, some of them have got horrible diagnosis from the doctors, and we've seen the Lord heal so many people. We have a miracle book, and they write their miracles down in it, and it's getting so full that we're going to take a Wednesday night to just read all the miracles that God's done. So
Wow.
it's rewarding, it's wonderful. I believe we're doing what the Lord has called us to do, and I just feel completely content. So when Sherry asked me to be in charge of the women over the church, it just felt like a perfect fit to just slide right in there. And so, and then with Sherry and Kim helping me, it really makes for a wonderful ministry, I believe.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Anybody else want to share what inspired you to join women's ministry?
Yeah, so with me, I think it started very early where just being at the local church, um, ladies, older women would come to me just to talk for advice, very informal, just in a corner, kind of on the way out of the church, or even a phone call to the house. Maria, could we go out for coffee, kind of, and just sitting down with women one on one, in front of each other, and just listening and realizing how many women in the church, and when I talk about the church, I mean the church in general, um, are just hurting. They're just hurting, and and knowing that they're walking around with a smile on their face, but inside they were just hurting, and that hurt me. That hurt my heart when I saw women like this, because it wasn't just one or two. And then I would talk to other women, and it was happening in different churches. And I felt at that point the Lord calling me to minister to them. Um, and I think that's where it started. It started just one on one, and then I took over the women's ministry at the church, and through retreats, through just conferences. It took a life of its own from there, and then my career then started almost shaping based on the need that I saw in the church, even though it was a secular uh a trade. But still, I was always looking to prepare myself better, and how do I minister to this woman. I would find myself going to purchase books. I'm an avid reader. I mean, my home is a library. Um, but the majority of the books were on helping, were on how to lead a group, how to speak to a woman who's hurting, how to heal a broken heart. And so I felt like the Lord was leading me in all those areas to minister to women. And so that's where my heart comes from. Yeah, I feel it started very early on in life.
That's awesome. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing. Sandy, do you want to say anything before we move on to the next question?
Sure. In every season of my life as a women minister, God has led me into situations that were surprisingly difficult for me. The first 4 years in Mexico, I worked with kids in an oncology unit who were dying and were sent home to die. And then I got plopped into, I wasn't looking for it, but I got kind of like shoved into a community of gay men who were dying of HIV the next 12 years of ministry. And from there, now I'm doing ministry with university students. Never done any of these in my lifetime until those doors open. And what I discovered what I began to realize is in each of those areas, there was a mom that was hurting, that was
Yes.
grieving, that was isolated, that didn't have friends. So in each of those areas, I started support groups. And as a result of that, those women became such an inspiration to me. They began to come together and start to be a blessing in their community. And there is power in women coming together. Women change things, you know, women get the job done. Women know how to bless. Women have sensitive hearts and seem to be willing to listen to the prodding of the Holy Spirit to be a blessing in the kingdom. And so for me, it was just being thrown into new and difficult cultures and situations, finding those moms that were hurting and then bringing them together.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. All right, so we're gonna switch gears. This is my last question for you right now. Can you describe your ideal team leader? So think of somebody that you have served under. Could be a pastor, it could be another women's ministry leader, it could be somebody at work, a boss, maybe supervisor. Describe your ideal team leader. It could be a real person, or it could be a conglomeration of, I liked this about this person and this about this person. And if we could all pour it into one human being, it would be the perfect leader to serve under.
Mm.
I don't mind sharing because that's an easy one for me to answer.
Go ahead.
My ideal team leader is somebody who is not intimidated or threatened by other people's strength, but instead thrives on that and loves learning from that and bringing all of those strengths to the table to make a better team.
Yeah.
I love that. That's awesome. Anyone else?
I was going to say that too. I've observed different women's leaders over my time, and I've noticed if there's a leader who's insecure or maybe jealous if someone else comes, you know, to help out, or if someone's going to come in and speak and then they're not, I don't know. I've just observed a lot over the many years that we've been in ministry, and a secure person who, just like Sandy just said, who's not intimidated by others. Also someone who carries humility, someone who knows they can't do it themselves. Like, I completely know I could not do what we do without Kim, without Sherry, without, and I have a whole crew. My 20 ladies help me do everything we do. And so it turns out beautiful because we have so many people working at it. So no one person gets to take all the credit, and no one person needs to do everything. Everyone has giftings and everyone has beautiful abilities. I was just listening to Hebrews today where it said, don't forget the gift that God has given you. And, you know, it's our part as leaders to encourage those gifts to be used and not to be intimidated by them or threatened by them. So I agree, Sandy, that's a good leader that's not feeling those things.
That's awesome. What about you, Maria? No pressure to answer, but I don't want you to.
No, it's, I think along the same lines. I think, you know, a leader is someone who is able to identify the strengths in others, and sometimes identifying the strengths in others that other person doesn't even know they have, and to build them up, and to put them in areas and capacities where that person could grow. I think when leaders could do that for others, then you have a much better team to work with. Um, Again, because sometimes what I have found is that many times women don't even recognize what they could bring to the table. They don't know what they have. And sometimes it takes somebody from the other side looking in to see the potential in this person and really shifting them and bringing them out of their comfort zone and putting them in positions and in areas where they will grow. I think that makes a really, really, really good leader. When you could stand back and let others shine, you I think that's the best way to lead.
That's so good. Well, it sounds like we're all describing a very similar type of leader. And so as we are leading, I want to just kind of talk about the stages of team development. Um, this is something that I hinted at the beginning. We may all be in different stages of team development. Um, we just did a leadership summit this past winter in January and February, and I had the privilege of teaching one of the breakouts, one of the workshops, and I talked about um being better together and how peer relationships, being mentored, mentoring others, and how duplicating ourselves all are great like ways to actually begin to build a team. And it was more in like the recruitment kind of mindset of how do we even get volunteers? And so we talked a lot about that in our last leadership summits. And so tonight I wanted to talk about kind of like the next stage. So, let's say you already have a team or you've already recruited some people, and just kind of go through these 4 stages of what your team might look like. And this is something that I just learned a few years ago, but it has been around since the 1960s. Bruce Tuckman is a psychologist, and he kind of put this all together into something that it rhymes. So I'm like, perfect. Pastors and preachers and church leaders, we love things that either rhyme or alliteration. They all just start with the same letter or end with the same sound. It's how we remember things. And it worked for me. I was like, oh, I remembered this. And so I wanted to kind of show it to you guys a little bit, just to kind of show that everybody's teams are in different stages, and that your team may be in one of these stages, but you may be trying to figure out what's going on, why are we in this stage, what are we doing, and how do we get to the next one. You may not even recognize it for what it is. And so for me, I have been on multiple teams, and I've been on teams where I'm at the bottom of the totem pole. I've been on teams where I'm number 2, and I've been on teams where I'm the leader, like the buck stops here. And I've been on teams where we all were kind of thrust together. We were all invited to be on at the same time. I've been on teams where people were assigned to my team. I didn't get to pick people. I just was assigned people. And so there's a whole nother dynamic. And how do you work with people that you don't know, that you haven't developed trust with yet? And then there's also teams where you are not the one in charge. You're just trying to figure out where everybody fits, and you're trying to do your part, and you're trying to support. And all of those teams are going to look different. They're all going to function differently, but it's important to know where you're at in the team development, because it's going to help you think differently through different scenarios that might come up. And so the first stage that Tuckman says is forming. Forming is the first stage, and he has actually a 5th stage. I've only put 4 on here. We'll get to the 5th one at the end. But forming is simply the team is just coming together. People are just getting to know each other. They're just getting to figure out what their roles are. And the leader maybe is even new to the team. Or maybe you have a well-established team, but you're bringing in a new person. All of a sudden, you're going to be back in this forming, team development stage. And then the next one is storming. So stage 2 is storming. And this is where that team that's been formed, everybody's kind of getting to know each other. But now you're starting to really the honeymoon phase is kind of over. You're all getting to know each other, and the real you starts to come out. And this is where you might see some conflict. You might see some friction, because people are like, well, my way's better. I don't know who you think you are. We're going to do it this way, not that way. Or you can do what you want, but I'm going to go over here and do it this way. And you start to see where people begin to push against boundaries, and people begin to uh it's like if your team is a pyramid, they're all trying to climb up to that top, right? And so everybody's trying to figure out where the chips fall, kind of like where everybody falls. And so that's the storming stage. A lot of teams get stuck here. A lot of teams can fall apart here. But if you can press through, you get to the norming stage. This is stage 3. And this is where people are starting to resolve their differences. They're beginning to understand and appreciate other people's strengths rather than be threatened by them. And they begin to, if you are the leader, they begin to respect your authority as a leader. They begin to respect your role as the team leader a little bit more, because by now they've caught the vision and there's a little bit more smoothness happening here. And then you get to like peak stage, which is performing. This is where everybody is on the same page. And while everybody may be doing different things and have different strengths, everybody's going in the same direction. And so goals are being met, events are going well, things are, people are excited about what's next. And so these are kind of the 4 stages that most teams will find themselves in, one or the other. There's a 5th one, and I didn't include it here because the 5th one is called adjourning or mourning. And Tuckman added it later, but it's essentially when a team comes to the end of their cycle together. And so we're not really going to touch on that part today. Maybe that could be another topic we talk about, is what happens when you have to transition a team member off, or what happens if, you just have one team for a specific temporary project and now that's come to an end. We can maybe talk about that later another time. But I wanted to focus on these 4 today because really your team is going to be in one of these 4 categories. And these categories, while somewhat sequential, it's not like you've moved through the first 3 stages and now you'll always be performing. Sometimes you might get knocked back a stage or 2, depending on the circumstances. So you could perform really well. You could have an event that you're pulling off and everybody does a great job. And now it's time to go and plan the next year's event. But 1 or 2 people on your team, your planning committee, can't do next year's event. Now you have to recruit 2 more people and you have to figure out what their strengths are. And so you kind of get knocked back to the forming stage. That's all normal. And really, this isn't like new information, but I wanted to share it today because I think sometimes we have this idea of what the perfect team looks like. And we begin to think, my team doesn't look like that, so I must be a bad leader. I must be doing something wrong. And I think it's just important for us to see that you may be doing everything right. You may be doing everything that you know how to do. You're on this call, so you're even trying to learn more, which is a huge factor. That's what I consider a big key in an ideal leader, is a leader that's a learner. It's always wanting to know more. They, not because they want to like lord it over people like I know more than you, but because they want to be better. They want to grow, because if the team leader grows, the team grows, and then the ministry grows because of that. But I wanted to show this to you because I want you to be encouraged that wherever your team happens to be today, that's okay, because there's a future there and there's hope there that you could get to, like I said, the ideal one would be performing, that everybody's going at their full potential, everybody's working within their strengths, that this is something that that you can get to. This isn't an ideal team. This is something that you can get to. But I wanted to just put out there for a little bit of discussion 4 different questions here, and hopefully you can see them. I have you guys in like a row on the side, so it's kind of blocking my view of them. I'm hoping that you can see them, but I'll go ahead and read them to you. And we don't have to go into all of these, but maybe we can pick just 1 or 2 of these right now, and we can just talk about them. But I wanted to just kind of put it out there. And if we don't talk about them right now, write them down and like think on these later, like after the call or tomorrow or this week. And even put it before your team. But just right now, let's pick one or two to talk about. And the first question is, which of these 4 stages, forming, storming, norming, or performing, is your team in right now? And then the other question number 2, does your ministry have a clearly communicated vision or mission? Like, everybody knows what it is. Everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing, what they're aiming for. And another question that we can possibly discuss is, do you, as the ministry leader, do you embody your own ideal leadership qualities? All those things we just talked about a few minutes ago, do we embody those as a leader? And then just a fun one, what are some creative ways that you show appreciation to your team members? So just wanted to throw these out there and open it up for discussion for a couple minutes. Carol, what about you? You've expressed that you're new to this leading this particular team, and you have a couple of people that you work side by side with, but then you have 20 women under you that help, they're kind of your serve team. So which of the 4 stages would you consider your team in right now?
Oh, this is very interesting because I'm so thankful for this tonight, because I was just feeling like, okay, I need to put people in categories of their strengths. And, greeters have to be friendly, good people that can greet well and make people feel comfortable and welcome. And then you need people that are hard workers that will get the job done and stay late and not try to sneak out. And then you have, there's certain different types of people. And so I've been like writing all this down, but then I feel overwhelmed trying to figure it all out with that many people. So I would have to say, for me, I am in the forming stage, even though we've had several successful events. I know we're planning to get together soon, the 3 of us, and do the what went well, what could improve, and what didn't go good, and work out some of these problems. But I do have some of those people that you talked about that are, well, I'm going to do it my way. I don't care what you're doing, just a couple bad attitudes. And I was going to ask you, and one particular person is part of my Bible study, and it's obvious every week there's always certain things that happens with her that comes out. And I keep saying, do I need to pull her aside and have a conversation, or what? Because so I do have a lot of questions about certain things. Most of my ladies are very, whatever you need, Carol, whatever, and they just get the job done. They do it. We just did a funeral of a young 19-year-old in our church that was killed on a motorcycle. We just did it Sunday after church. And I just pulled 7 of my ladies together, and they set up, they served food, they cleaned up afterwards. Sherry and I greeted at the door to welcome everyone and pass out flyers. Like, it worked really smoothly. But there's the people who will just call at the last minute and say they can't come. So there's people like that. You have to kind of weed out and say, they can't be on my number 1 dependable team, because I need to be able to depend on them. So so I'm still new at this. And so I'm trying to figure this all out of how to do this, how to organize it by the giftings and who's good at what and all that.
You're doing a great job. You're doing a great job. And the forming stage, it's not a one and done. So you mentioned even though you've had several successful events, you still feel like you're in the forming stage. Forming takes time. It just does. It could take a couple of years before everybody really begins to figure out where they fit, what their gifts are. And even for you, especially with a larger team, your serve team, that's a lot. 20 women is a lot to get to know on a personal level quickly. That's going to take time. And as Maria said, an ideal leader like recognizes gifts in people and calls them out. And that only comes with 2 things: the discernment from the Holy Spirit and time and investing in relationship with them. So be encouraged. You may have a whole nother season before you get to where you feel like you finally have something that's not just Jello, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. So that's good. That's good. Anyone else? One of the questions maybe has kind of piqued your interest that you'd want to share about.
I think just quickly, I'm not running any kind of teams right now. I have in the past and throughout my career. But one of the things that I find, just like you were saying, is most teams get stuck in the performance stage. I mean, we just tend to, that's where our insecurities come in. That's where the pushing and pulling comes in. One of the things that has helped me, I think, when I'm dealing with that situation of the storming area is bringing them back, almost like, because I feel like it's scattered, and then bringing them back and asking them questions that I would ask um, when I am in a group of clinicians and we're worried about a case, um, and we're worried about a child who's probably has tried to commit suicide or an overdosed or whatever that may be, and we ask specific questions. What are we worried about? But I will ask that in this team. At that
Mhm.
stage, I will ask that. What is it that we're worried about? Because everybody's behavior is based on something.
Mm.
And so, and then, okay, what is it that's working well? Because again, they can't see that something is working well because everybody is scattered at this stage. And then what needs to happen? And I think when I ask those questions, I pull them right back in. And so again, because it's a really difficult stage to be in as a team. There's a lot of risk that is gonna um, not materialize. The vision is not gonna happen, and we need to get through that stage and just bringing them back, figuring out what is it that's worrying everyone, what is it that's working well, and building on those things that are working well, and what needs to happen. What needs to happen for us to get back on track? And I feel that when we do that, then the team gets back and now we could normalize it. Okay, let's move on to the next stage.
Yeah. But I think that's wise, Maria. And I would even say that answers or may help answer, Carol, your question about the storming stage. What do you do? You really need to address it prayerfully, but quickly. If you let it fester, things will continue to deteriorate, you know? So you definitely want to make sure that that's something that you are talking about, that you're go one-on-one, you're talking with them, or like Maria said, you're pulling your whole team in and you're addressing the why and things like that. So that's really good. Thank you. Sandy, any wise words of wisdom from you? Have led a lot of teams and you've been doing this for a while. Do you have anything you'd want to add to this?
I just put in the chat, I had to look it up on my Kindle, but for Carol, this is I'm sharing with you a book that really helped me with conflict management. It's called Confronting Without Offending. And just throwing it out there as a resource maybe for you, if you know, when you said you needed to talk with somebody who's you know, prickling the group a little bit, or the dynamics of the group, this might help. I'm probably at a couple of different stages right now. I'm doing university ministry, but there is a very young, inexperienced couple that was brought in, colleagues that don't have any experience, that were assigned to be the director. So I'm at the bottom of the totem pole in terms of, I'm not leading. I'm one of the group, even though I have many years of ministry experience. And so it's been very much a challenge for me to learn how to submit and be a team player. And that's where I'm at right now in that area. And then I'm also at the happy but kind of grieving stage of having passed the baton off to somebody else in terms of medical outreaches for church planting. That is now Mexican run, Mexican governed. The three selves that we talk about in missions, it is self-sustaining, self-governing, and self-propagating. And all of those things are happening now. And that just was a process. I think somebody brought it up. I don't know if it was you, Nikki, that brought up time. It takes time to build trust, to build, to go into that norming and perform. I can't remember the stages. Performing. I took a screenshot. That's my way of note taking. I do screenshots. I love that on computers. But
I'm trying to go back to that slide and it's not letting me, so I apologize.
Oh,
but yes.
I have the screenshot. Oh.
Good.
But you know that getting to that performing stage took, oh gosh, 20 years. And there was conflict management all along the way, and building leadership in other people, so that, because I think the goal of any good minister, any good missionary, any good pastor, the goal, any good parent, is to work themselves out of a job.
Yeah.
And so so that's been passed on, and now I went from that to I'm at the bottom right now learning to work with people who are learning themselves how to do this. So we're definitely in the storming stage right now.
Yeah, that's good. And I think one of the key ways to move past the storming stage is to just recognize that you're in that stage.
Yes.
And I love what you said, Sandy. It is so true. You really have to have patience, because I think we just assume that I put out a sign up sheet, I put up a QR code, and I got all these people who are excited to join a team. And we think, by next month, you're going to have it all together and you guys are going to be great. And I think we need to just kind of alter some of our own expectations, that this is the long game. This is the long game. Even if you're just putting a team together to plan one event. Let's say you're not even planning a whole ministry team. It's just a team to plan one event. It's still the long game, because you want that event to be successful. And most likely you're going to try to do that event again next year. And whether or not, you probably don't want to start from scratch. And so I think that's what I'm taking away. I'm learning right alongside you guys. I'm taking that away. It's just that encouragement that this really is the long game. And while you may bounce back and forth between forming, storming, norming, and performing, it's not because you are not a good leader. It's just because that's how teams work. That's just the reality of it. And so there's nothing wrong with being in one stage or the other. It's just recognizing what stage you're in and then doing what you can. And according to what you feel is the ideal leader, doing what you can to try to move into your whole team into that next thing. And I can't remember who said it, but somebody said identifying strengths and putting them in so that everybody's strengths gets utilized. It's not about us. That's what I've learned. When you get to the place where you are the leader, like the buck stops here, you actually have almost the least amount of influence, because it's not about you using all of your gifts and all of your talents to shine. You have now taken a proverbial back seat, and it's the complete opposite of what we think. We think I've become the leader. Now it's all about me. It's absolutely not about you. This is where we have an opportunity to take the back seat, because the Lord has entrusted us now at a new level with people. So he's not just entrusted us with a message. He's not just entrusted us with a gift of speaking or a gift of Bible teaching. He's now entrusting us with his children. He's entrusting us with people. And that takes a level of humility that is a special leadership skill in and of itself. So I am so sorry. My dog is, he's coughing in the background. Hopefully you guys can't hear that. But anyway, I'm like trying to talk and he's over here hacking up a hairball or something. But anyway, I wanted to, before we ended tonight, and I'll end the recording, but I do want to pray together before we close. But I just wanted to give you a few resources for further study. The first two that you see on the screen are books that, the first one, The 6 Types of Working Genius. Our assistant superintendent, John Martin, has taken all of the department heads in the SoCal network through this book. And it truly is, it takes you through kind of a story of a leader coming into a company as the new person, and now he has to figure out this team that has all been there longer than him, but he has to figure out how what their gifts are and where everybody fits together. And Patrick Lencioni uses the acronym WIDGET, and each of those letters are a different type of working genius. And he teaches how to recognize people's working geniuses and how to better leverage that. And maybe your team is stuck in the storming or in the forming stages because you're missing a key element. Maybe the answer is adding somebody who has that gift to your team. So I would encourage you to go through the 6 Types of Working Genius. I think it's a really great kind of metaphorical analogy, but it has some really great key points in it as well. The one that you'll see at the bottom is the Leadership Challenge. This is what I'm taking my team through, the Women of SoCal directors. We are going through this with a coach, and it's a similar type book. So I'm not saying you have to read both of them, but the Leadership Challenge really does help an understanding that leadership skills, when you're building your team and you want to recognize those skills, they can be learned. It's not just something that you're born with. You can learn these leadership skills, or you can help others learn these leadership skills, but it's often through relationship. So that's a very big key point to this. And so there's different things, like you may have somebody on your team that's a challenger, and you may think they challenge the process, and you may think, why are they always trying to ruffle everybody's feathers? And so you may think you're stuck in that conflict cycle because this person is always saying, well, have you thought about it doing it this way? And you're like, why do you always have to bring up something to think about differently, But maybe that's one of their strengths. And if we can reframe that as they're not trying to criticize you, they're just trying to say, can we refine it and make it better? Right. And so it's one of those things where maybe you can reframe how you view some people's strengths that you may think they're just being annoying. And maybe they're not. Maybe that's how God wired them. So I would really encourage you. The Leadership Challenge is a great book as well. And then there's another one. If I can, why is it not? There we go. Multipliers. I read this book years and years ago. It's a little bit older, but Multipliers by Liz Wiseman literally talks about what we've been talking about, is that recognizing other people's gifts and pulling it out of them, and how we are better as a team when we pull more people in. And really, that's the thing, is everybody's like, how do we get more volunteers? How do we recruit people? She really does take you through the fact that just like Jesus, who could have done ministry alone, but chose not to, we also can bring people alongside us and multiply ourselves. And like Sandy said, work ourselves out of a job. And it's not because you don't deserve to be in that leadership position. And it's not because God said, you're out, I'm bringing this person in because they're so much better. It's because you don't know what doors God's going to open for you in the future. And you want to make sure your team is well equipped. And if you're building up leaders in your ministry team, then if God calls you into something new, nobody's going to panic. They may be sad, they're going to miss you, but they're not going to freak out, because what are we going to do? Because you have done the work to build leaders to come alongside you. And so she talks about 2 different types, the diminishers and the multipliers. And she really shows you how to be a multiplier. So those are 3 books that I would really highly recommend if you are able to. And so now I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, because I want us to just really talk about this for a couple minutes, and see if I can stop the share. There we go. All right. All right. So I wanted to just open it up before we close and before I show you the new website, what our next topic should be. So, we've talked about team building. Our next one is going to be July 23rd. So it's a couple months away. So it gives me time, if we can land on a topic, to prepare something or find another leader who can come in and maybe give a guest presentation. But is there another topic that you would like to talk about?
Well, I've been thinking one of my next things that I think would be really neat is to do a conference like what you did
Mm-hmm.
up north that we went to. I
Mm-hmm.
loved that. I loved a whole day conference where there were so many different things, different speakers. And, it was wonderful. And I thought it would be neat if we could do that too. But there's so much involved in planning that I would probably need some good advice.
Yeah. So how to plan a bigger conference, not just like a lunch or a tea, but something that's like
Mhm,
a whole day or maybe a Friday night, Saturday.
mhm.
That's an excellent topic option. Any other suggestions? All right then. Well, Carol, I think that's a great topic. And so I'll put it out there and we'll see if we can get some resources for you. And we'll talk about that in July, which is actually really great because it's about the time everybody's starting to kind of plan their annual calendars. So we can kind of go through some event planning how-tos, some basics, but more like how to do something a little bit on a bigger scale. So I think that's great. Thank you very much.
Do something, Nikki. Something that I loved was how all of the people that were working for you, your team, were so nobody seemed frazzled. Nobody seemed like if something ran out, like there wasn't cream for the coffee or something, and they were okay. I will get that for you. Just hold on one second. They were so friendly and they took time, the biggest things, and nobody was stressed out. I love that. I love the spirit of that. It felt so warm and cozy. I've been to conferences where it's just been frantic and where's this and where's that, and
Yeah,
but it didn't feel like that at all. It just
yeah,
flowed and
yeah.
it was beautiful.
Well, thank you. That's very kind of you to say. And yeah, maybe I can pull a couple of those particular team members on the call next time and we can kind of talk about that. So that's great. That's a great idea. Thank you, Carol. Well, real quick, I'm going to share my screen one more time because I promised you I'd show you something on our website that we just launched last week. And so I'm going to show you. And all right, can you see what I have on here? SoCal Network at the top, Women of SoCal Gatherings. All right. This is the link that you are going to want to go to if you are at all interested in attending or bringing a group to our fall retreats. This is socalnetwork.org/gatherings. And I'll make sure that the link gets put in our private Facebook group as well. But on here, you will see a couple of things. We have all of our retreats on here. Our theme is Seen this year. And you'll see everything is in English and Spanish. Some of it we're still translating. But the most important thing, there are two things I want to show you as a leader of ministry to women is number one, registration is going to be here at this website on June 20th at 10 a.m. And that is only important if you are interested in getting a condo because those sell out within minutes. So if you want to get a condo, I highly recommend that you jump on here right at 10 a.m. and go ahead and go through the registration for the weekend that you're interested in. If you want a bunkhouse or if you want a lodge, which are two different other types of housings, those typically don't sell out right away for the English retreats. Spanish, that's a whole nother ball game. Those typically do sell out, but for the English ones, you should be okay. But we want to make sure that you understand when registration opens and how much it costs so that you can begin fundraising, you can begin promoting it. And so all of the dates are on there, all of the information. There's even a link here to watch the promo video if you want to share that out. And then you'll see here resources for group leaders. I'm going to show you that here in just a second. But just so you're aware, We also, on one of the weekends, week 3, the English one, October 4th and 5th, if you are a credentialed minister or you are interested in pursuing credentials, if you feel a call on your heart that you want to do more than just be a lay leader in your church, you're feeling like God is calling you to get credentialed with the Assemblies of God and be an actual like minister of the gospel, credentialed, they are doing a leadership cohort on this particular weekend alongside all of the other retreat activities. So you still get to be a part of the main sessions, but then they're going to have other things, activities, breakouts, different things that they're going to be doing alongside us. So it's like a network of women ministers retreat at the same time as our women's retreat. So I'm really excited about this. Joanne Johnson and her team are leading the charge on planning it, and it's going to be outstanding. So that's something that you might be interested in. But you'll also see descriptions on each of the lodging, how much they are, so you can kind of decide what's right for your church, what's right for your women, what's right for you. If you just want to come by yourself, you're welcome to do that too. And then you can choose your date, and this is where you will see the dates, and then right below it, when registration goes live, that's the button you push for that date to register. Does that make sense? So if you're like, I want to go to week 1, you're not going to go over here and click the button under week 4 because you'll register for the wrong weekend. So just make sure that you are registering, you're clicking the right button, and we'll have the dates on there so you'll know what you're clicking. And then it tells you who the main speaker is. For the English retreats, our main speaker is Dr. Joy Qualls. She is an outstanding minister. She is she's the Dean of Communications. She is skilled in so many things, and she has such a passion for everybody, specifically everybody, but she is coming because she wants to share the gospel with women, and she is just so, I'm excited that she's coming to speak. So she's going to be our main speaker at the English retreats. We're still kind of finalizing some details about the Spanish ones, and so we'll put that up as soon as we know. But this is what I really want you to know. If you are bringing a group, these are resources you might want to see as you're beginning to promote it. So we have down here at the bottom of this page, we have a promo video that you can go to. It's on YouTube, so you can share that with your ladies. There's a map to Pinecrest, so you can see how far of a drive is it from where you are, how long is it going to take to get there, the directions when it's time to go, all that is there. There's links to each of our private Facebook groups. So if you want to know what other women's ministry leaders are doing and how they're planning this, you can go in there and ask that. You can access it through there. But here's what I'm really excited about. We're trying to make it easy for you to promote this. So you can actually, if you have a Canva account, you can click this little icon, or you can click right here, and it'll open up to Canva, and it'll give you all of the templates that we've built that have all of the theming, the colors, the fonts, all of that, if you want to make slides for your church that are customized. So let's say you want to change the price because, it's going to be 100, we're charging 175 per room, but you got to kick in some gas money, right? So you want to charge 180. You can change that on your slide and put whatever price you want to charge on your slide. And so all of that is at socalnetwork.org/gatherings. So if you're interested at all, we also have pictures of the past retreats if you've never been. So we're really excited, and we're trying every year to make it a little bit easier for people to come, to know what they're getting into. But I guarantee you're going to want to be there. And here's a trick that I learned actually from our Hispanic women's ministry leaders. A lot of them will come by themselves to a retreat to get filled up, and then they come to a second retreat with their women so they can serve and they can lead them well. And so that might be something to consider even. So especially if you're interested in that track with the Network of Women Ministers, maybe you bring your women to the first English retreat in September, and then you yourself come to the one in October so that you can be fed and people, you can see what the Lord does in your life, be refreshed as you close out the year. So there's a couple of things I was just excited. I just wanted to share with you, and we'll be posting all of that in the Facebook group as well when here really soon. So anyway, we're coming to the end of our time. I forgot I was still recording, so I'm going to stop that now. And